The animal rights movement has been a problem for many, many years for people who like to hunt. And it's becoming more and more a problem for society in general as they try to reshape society into their view of what the world should be like. The animal rights movement has been gaining power and influence. It's been gaining in terms of its financial abilities, its ability to raise money. It's gaining political influence, and it's out to change the very fabric of our society. It's out to change the way we live and not change it for the better, as a matter of fact. I've been opposed to the animal rights movement for over 3 decades. In recent years, there have been a number of books and articles that have come out trying to use the Holy Bible as a basis for their argument. And all of those arguments that they use are highly flawed. So I have written a book which basically counters their arguments by using the Scriptures. The Bible in no way supports the concept of animal rights. Instead, it supports the concept of animal stewardship and the use of animals for human needs. Animals were placed here as a part of the creation, as a part of God's creative will for the utilization and enjoyment of man. They are not on equal with man. One of the premises of the animal rights movement, especially of the more radical groups, is that animals and humans are equal because of evolution. The evolution of an animal is really only an accident in their minds, and the evolution of human beings is an accident in a different direction. But there's really no basic difference in their mind. We know that's not true from the Bible, because the Bible tells us that God made man in his own image, and God has made man his image bearer in this world. So he is higher than the animals. He was made to rule over everything from the land animals, the beasts of the field, to the fish of the sea. And to say that he is on par with the animal kingdom is basically a lie. They do believe that human beings are the problem. And we're not God's image bearer, God's representative, God's steward of the creation in their eyes. We are a highly evolved agent of damage, agent of unnatural change, and so they oppose most human endeavors. And I always point out that the animal rights activists work in concert with the radical environmentalists. They use such laws as I cover in my book to actually push their agenda. And some of these laws, like the Endangered Species Act, sound good on the surface, but when you use it to stop all human progress, we couldn't build our interstate system nowadays because of the Endangered Species Act, the Wetlands Act, and all these other acts that we've passed. We couldn't do that. That project would be impossible because every mile would be contested over some point of law. The Bible absolutely does not sanction cruelty to animals. The Bible gives us many guidelines for stewardship of animals and how we're to treat animals and how we're to keep them watered and fed. And there are many scriptures that tell us that we are to take good care of our animals. Not the smallest reason being that they're more productive and they're healthier and they're a better resource for us to utilize, but also because it's just wrong in God's sight for us to be cruel. He's a loving God, but to misuse that word love to apply to the animal-human relationship is wrong too, and that's very clear in the Bible. We're to love our brother and our neighbor. But there's not a single place in the Bible, anywhere, where it says that we're to love animals. So loving animals is not a biblical concept, but being cruel to animals is something that the Bible condemns. Well, we cannot fight disease without animals. There's no question that the animal research model, with its functioning immune system and its circulating blood, is absolutely essential. They're right now trying to develop an H1N1 swine flu virus. They're using animals to do that. Without animals, they would be totally helpless. Mankind will be left at the mercy forces that are totally beyond our control if we aren't able to use animals for research. And these radical groups are absolutely against utilization of animals for any kind of research, for medical research and for young doctors learning how to do surgery. I know I participated in dog surgery, but even there we were under guidelines so that the animal did not suffer any more than absolutely necessary. Animals are absolutely necessary for us to have a strong medical research program and in order to train people, and I don't know how we would do without it, frankly. I think evolution, and I cover that in the first chapter of my book, which is entitled Creation, Evolution, and Biblical Integrity. And I cover that because it's the environmental movement in general, the radical environmental movement, and the animal rights movement are tied close together in that they both believe that this creation is essentially eternal. It all came into being by accident. It essentially is eternal, and it's self-directed. It's all a product of chance. As such, that we've got to do everything in our power to make it last forever. Even if it costs us the human population, we've got to make this creation last forever. They don't look upon it as being controlled by the hand of God, and that He has a plan for this creation, and that He's the agent who is absolutely in control. I'm a medical doctor, first of all, and with training in eye surgery. I'm an ophthalmologist, board-certified ophthalmologist. And ever since 1986, I've gone to the third world at some point during the year, almost every year, to do eye surgery. I've done over 1,000 operations in Honduras and Jamaica. And I do that because I care for my brothers and sisters there. And I think that's an outworking of this principle of love your neighbor. God wants us to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so that's why I do it. I have a skill that I can offer to the needy world, and I offer it to them. I enjoy doing it. It's a great blessing to me, much more so than to the people that I operate on, I think. And as long as my physical health will allow me, I will continue to do that. Vegetarianism is really a recent phenomenon in terms of its widespread practice. There's two kinds of vegetarians, of course. There are the kinds of vegetarians that are moderate vegetarians who do eat eggs and dairy products, and you can survive very well on that diet. It's not the most tasty diet in the world, in my opinion. I've tried it. But you can survive very well because you can get your B12 and some of your amino acids and adequate amounts of iron and so on from dairy products and eggs. But if you are a radical in your vegetarianism, and you don't believe that any animal should be kept in a pen so that they'll produce eggs, or should be manipulated so that they produce dairy products, or confined so that they produce dairy products, then you're what's known as a vegan, which is an impossible position to maintain. Every single human being on the planet and every animal came off Noah's Ark with a new set of needs that they didn't know about. And those needs are why God pronounced that as they came off the ark, he told Noah for the first time, man had been told before, every green plant shall be your food. When they came off the ark, something had changed. And what had changed was our ability to get from green plants some of these nutrients that we nowadays cannot get, because God, one of the first few things that He told Noah was, now you can eat animals. So something changed, and what it was, for some reason before the flood, mankind and all the animals, including our predators of today, were able to get from green plants vitamin B12 primarily. Vitamin B12 is the essential ingredient that you can't get from vegetable sources. It's always made by microorganisms, which are in essence the tiniest of animals. If you eat meat, you get it, it's still made by microorganisms in the intestines of certain animals. The animals that we call herbivores can make this in their intestines. But animals that we call carnivores, and actually human beings are among those, who cannot make significant amounts of vitamin B12 in the bacteria in our intestines won't do it for us, like it does for a cow or a sheep or a goat. So we have nutritional needs that cannot be met in any other way except through animal sources. So vegetarians who follow this radical philosophy, they're known as vegans, and the people who follow that philosophy still get their vitamin B12 from either yeast extract or from certain bacterial extracts where these teeny small animals, very small animals, have made this for them. So it's an untenable position to say that you're a total vegetarian, because you can't get vitamin B12 from anywhere except an animal source. I was an evolutionist myself until I had an epiphany during my training in examining the visual system. And in examining that system, and I can describe that in great detail if I have to, but it can't have come into being accidentally. So I rejected evolution at that point. But evolution, and I've studied it since that point very extensively. I've read all the materials that I can get my hands on about evolution and why it can't be. And I've read all the arguments for evolution as well, and it can't be. And evolution actually is what has given rise to the animal rights movement, because they look upon mankind and animals as being equal. They don't look upon man as being the bearer of the image of God and as the steward of the creation, given that mandate by God himself. And it's written down very clearly in the Word that we are the steward of the creation. And this responsibility that we've been given is not a responsibility not to use animals. It's a responsibility to care for animals and utilize them in an ethical and God-ordained fashion. But without evolution, I don't think animal rights would have come to pass, because the view of mankind is, when you have the view of mankind that we're in the image of God and we're the steward of the creation, then that automatically quenches any animal rights mentality. In Revelation 6:8, it tells us that 1/3 of the population of the world during the apocalypse is going to be destroyed by 4 forces. It's war, famine, disease, and the wild beasts of the earth. That's why the animal rights movement, I believe, is so intent on putting huge predators back into all parts of the world, and freeing pets. You're going to have packs of wild dogs running loose when they're against pets, and they're against zoos. And if you open the gates of the zoos in the major cities of the world, and those animals in combination, God, for some reason, took away that fear of man that he imposed. That was the second thing he told Noah when he came off the ark. One thing, you can eat meat. Number 2, I'm going to put a terror on all the animals and even the fish of the sea. A terror of mankind, a totally illogical thing from an evolutionary standpoint. There's no reason man should, that animals, like a giant brown bear from Alaska, should fear mankind. But I know from personal experience that if they smell you, they're gone the other way. They get out of there. So when man was given, God gave that protection to man in order to keep him alive, to allow him to survive. But because he knew he would become a prey species too if he didn't do that. So he put that terror of mankind. Now, what if God took his Holy Spirit out of the world and at the same time took that terror off the animals? A cougar in California would stalk a human being. They do some now. It's just a foreshadowing, though. What they're going to do is they're going to wholesale turn human beings into a prey species. We'll be disarmed by the anti-gun people. We'll have no knowledge of how to repel these animals. There'll be no information put out as to how to live under a vegetarian regime. So people are going to be starving to death. They're going to be eaten by animals. They're going to get diseases that we have no way of countering. And of course, there's going to be some resistance to the world authority. So you've got all 4 positions, all 4 possibilities that are out there that are stacking up perfectly well, and mainly because of the radical environmental movement in combination with the animal rights movement. Biblical prophecy is being fulfilled.